Monday, next phase of the Protect Illinois Communities Act that you might hear called PICA, the state's semi-automatic weapons and magazine ban that has a new phase kicking in where you can't be out in public with certain semi-automatic rifles, handguns, or shotguns unless it's broken down and in a case that's closed and you can only get it out at private property that you have explicit permission from the property owner to have it. So you can still take it to a range, but questions about does it have to be a licensed range and where that license is coming from because the state doesn't license gun ranges. But regardless, there's a lot of unanswered questions and gray area that gun owners, 2.4 million in Illinois, are still struggling with. And this is after January 10th, the governor enacting the ban. And the law says that 90 days after enactment, you have these various provisions kick in where if you're caught with a magazine that fits into the definition of extended capacity magazines, you can get a petty offense and $1,000 per magazine. If you're caught out in public with a semi-automatic rifle or a shotgun or a handgun that matches the definition, you could very possibly face Class 3, maybe a Class 2 felony, depending on which number of infraction it is. So that happens Mondays when it kicks in. Next week, you've also got the case being brought up in federal court. April 12th down in East St. Louis. Consolidated cases challenging the state's gun ban on Second Amendment grounds. Don't forget about the state-level cases that are challenging the gun ban on equal protection grounds. You've got the Macon County case that's in the Illinois Supreme Court. They'll hear that mid-May. But there's also a bunch of other stuff going on outside of Illinois when it comes to litigation. But to get even more detail about what happens Monday, Josh Witkowski joins us. He is with Illinois Federation for Outdoor Resources. He's a representative. Josh, thanks for taking time. You guys obviously are trying to get the information out to hunters on how they're going to be impacted by this. So how are they going to be impacted by this? Well,
thank you for having me on, Greg. Immediately on Monday, April 10th, which is 90 days after the passing of Public Act 102-1116, hunters are going to be faced with not being able to possess what are labeled as assault weapons in the bill on public land. This means fish and game areas, state parks, wildlife areas, the national forest, any Corps engineer area, public hunting land. You now are banned from carrying anything that's labeled an assault weapon. Unfortunately, in that definition is any semi-automatic shotgun with a magazine capacity of greater than 5. That particular issue comes up with what's going on right now, which is snow goose season. There is a federal directive on snow goose hunting where you are not limited in magazine capacity. And your average snow goose gun is a semi-automatic shotgun carrying 8 rounds. They have an extension on the magazine tube, or they have a standard magazine tube that carries 8 rounds. Well, if they bring that shotgun onto public land on Monday, April 10th, while we're still in snow goose season, you've got a problem. You are now in possession of a so-called assault weapon on public land when you're not allowed to have that happen.
And the penalty could be what? I think first it's like maybe a misdemeanor, but the second offense might be Class 3 and then further Class 2. And it seems that the penalties, this is not something to sneeze at, right?
No, it's not. There's a potential for firearm seizure. There's a potential for felony involved. It's going to be a huge issue with the hunting community with that going on. And very particularly, in fact, when this law passed, we brought this attention to lawmakers down at the State House. You know, the few days that we debated it down there, we said, hey, there's this issue with this particular type of hunting. And their response was to put something in the law that says, okay, DNR and Illinois State Police can say that a firearm has legitimate sporting purposes. Problem is, they're not supposed to do that until October 1. So we have a 6-month discrepancy where we have this up in the air. You know, technically these firearms are not allowed on public property. You can still hunt private property, but going to and from the private property, the firearm has to be completely unloaded. Old transporting rules apply to that.
Josh Witkowski with us. He is a representative of the Illinois Federation for Outdoor Resources, raising the issue of what's going to be impacting gun owners if they're out hunting and they have certain types of shotguns. And this obviously is something that, as you mentioned, October 1st, that's not just when the registry opens, but for people to register these firearms. And they got a deadline for January 1st to complete that registration. But also the law spells out that every October 1st, the Illinois State Police can, by rule, change which guns are or aren't considered assault weapons. How is that going to impact hunters with the things that they may have down the line?
Well, we're hoping to see a list that comes out of permissible firearms that is inclusive of these kind of things, but we're not holding up too much hope for that. There's a new director at DNR. We're hoping for some good things because it is Illinois State Police in conjunction with Department of Natural Resources. It's a wait and see. Currently the only list that's out there is a list of what they consider to be prohibited firearms already. But in that list is semi-automatic shotgun that carries more than 5 rounds. But also of interest, we currently have turkey season. Just opened up in southern Illinois last week. It's going to open up in all of Illinois come Monday. And in turkey season, a very common firearm, the Mossberg Model 930. It's a semi-automatic shotgun, but it has a so-called pistol grip on it. This also becomes an assault weapon. So now you have turkey hunters and snow goose hunters who are both actively hunting Illinois public land who have to be very careful about their firearm selection. The firearm that's perfectly legal to carry onto public land on Sunday is no longer legal to use on Monday. In addition to that, you did mention the registration component. There are a lot of people that don't realize these very common hunting shotguns are going to have to be registered. You have to comply with the registration component as the law is currently written.
Now, that is unless the courts overturn the law, which could come out of the Southern District of Illinois maybe a week or so after a hearing Wednesday. So, again, Monday you've got the ban kicking in to where you can't have these things out in public unless they're broken down and inoperable in a closed case or only on private property. So that happens April 10th, but then April 12th in the Southern District East St. Louis Federal Court, that's when you're going to have this hearing. Josh, of course, this is something that's impacting hunters as early as Monday. If not, they've already been impacted to a degree, especially since sales of these have not been allowed since January 10th. What are you hearing from gun store owners, especially those that focus on, supporting the hunting community? How are they being impacted by this?
They're being seriously impacted. Like I was saying earlier, when this law passed, I was in a local firearms shop, and he said, well, what am I supposed to do with all these snow goose guns that I have on order? Because the guns that he had on order had a standard capacity of 8 rounds. So it is greatly impacting smaller shops at this point in time. And, of course, right here in Springfield, we've got the very large shop Shields, and you can just go in there and see what the impact is. That store is not nearly as busy up in the firearms section as it used to be. And a lot of this has to do with the way the law has impacted the types of commonly used firearms that are available.
And I was at a gun retailer over the weekend and snagged a picture of certain semi-automatic guns behind a closed, locked gate with the notes that only certain people are able to purchase these types of firearms. So, Josh, if people need more information, where can they find Illinois Federation for Outdoor Resources at?
So you can find us online on Facebook at Illinois Federation for Outdoor Resources. We do have a website. You can Google search for that. One other thing that we wanted to bring up, there's this issue of this 5-round capacity. It doesn't state that it has to be the size of the chamber. So a 12-gauge shotgun can have a chamber anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 inches in size, but a 3.5-inch 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun can typically carry 6 or 7 2 3/4 shells. So now there's the question is, does this automatically become an assault weapon because of this capability? Also, there's nothing in there about the restriction on size as functionality. So there's another product called a mini shell, which is a 1.5 or a 1 3/4 inch shell. Those 3.5, 3-inch, even 2.5 guns can carry more than 5 rounds of the smaller shells. So there's a question as to whether or not they will be prohibited under this law.
Josh, something else that just sparked in my mind here is also April 10th, people who are from out of this state apparently can only be in the state for 24 hours if they have a weapon that's defined as an assault weapon.
So
how is this going to impact Illinois' tourism when it comes to hunting?
Already is. So I actually fielded a message last night to the I-4 page. It was a gentleman who hunts out of Missouri, and he had no clue that his firearm that he regularly uses for hunting in Illinois was going to be called an assault weapon, and he had no clue that he was not going to be able to bring it into Illinois for anything other than what they call transport purposes. So yeah, just the fact that our group is already getting messages about this. Western and southwestern Illinois get a fair amount of hunters that come in from Missouri and Iowa, particularly for waterfowl. So it's already a big issue. The turkey hunting issue is definitely out there, especially with semi-automatics that have so-called pistol grips on them. It's going to be an impact for rural and downstate Illinois, unfortunately.
Josh Witkowski, some guns legal one day, illegal the next day, a lot of uncertainty and confusion as to what's what and where's where and who's who and whether or not somebody is even going to be able to prove to police that they've only been in Illinois for 23 hours. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Greatly appreciate your expertise on this, and we'll definitely talk again soon, all right?
All right, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Josh Witkowski with Illinois Federation for Outdoor Resources. Again, search them out and stay plugged into what they've got going on. It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY.